Hello, my name is Mike Donovan with Lion Dog African Safaris, and we are going to talk very briefly here about the Okavango Delta, which is one of our jewels of Africa. This is an excerpt out of our ebook called How to Best Tour Africa. It's if you're interested in obtaining it, you simply call us or email us and we'll send it to you free of charge. It's a PDF document, so we'll just send it to you electronically. Now, the Okavango Delta actually is in the country of Botswana. If you can just see on the, I'm just circling it there, in southern part of Africa. And in the northern part of Botswana, we have the Okavango Delta. And this is a very unique spot on the planet in that this is an inland delta that fills up with water from rains that occur in the country of Angola, north of Botswana. So, and this is a desert. This is the middle of the Kalahari Desert. And as the rains fall in Angola, they trickle southwards and they fill up this depression in the middle of the Kalahari Desert and with water. And as this water is filling up in this depression, hundreds of thousands of wildlife, very diverse wildlife, congregate in this Okavango Delta. And this is actually the premier safari destination in all of Africa. A lot of people aren't aware of that. However, it's also the most expensive. Botswana charges, the government of Botswana charges very high fees to the operators that operate in the Okavango Delta. Actually, throughout the entire country of Botswana, it's one of the more expensive places to go in Africa. And nevertheless, Okavango Delta from about May to September, October, excellent safari destination. Now, there's two parts of the Okavango Delta. Let me go back to this map again here. There's this area here, again, I don't know if you can make it out with my cursor here, but on the outside of the delta, these are the private concessions. And then in the middle of the delta, we have the Moremi Game Reserve. That's the public concession, okay? So I'm just going to flip back up to the next page here. And the best safaris are in the private concessions where the wildlife is abundant and diverse and where there's what we call a good mix of dry and wet safari opportunities, okay? Because there's quite a bit of water there, we can actually do a lot of safaris water-based. A lot of things you can do on the private concessions. We can do a driving safari, of course, and that includes nighttime safari, which is an excellent way to experience a game safari, because a lot of things happen at nighttime that wouldn't normally happen in the daytime. Different animals actually even come out, more than nocturnal animals. We can do boating safaris as far as a wet safari goes. We can do fishing, again, a wet safari. We can even do Makoro and walking safaris. Here, by the way, in our ebook here, we have these links. So if you just click on them, it'll open up and you can enlarge this. Here's a Makoro, which is a dugout canoe that they just pull through the marshes, and here you have some elephants in the background here, so that's kind of cool. To get out of this, we just press escape, brings us back to the video. We can just close it, and that takes us back to the document again. We can do horse riding, safaris. You have to be fairly accomplished equestrian, I might add. And we also even do elephant riding safaris, believe it or not. There's so many things that you can do in a private concession in the Okavango Delta. And again, this is a very remote location, so we're generally flying in as well, so that even adds on more to the cost of the tour. And we would typically stay at a lodge for several days at a time. The safari here is taken quite seriously. If you're kind of a casual safari person, that might not be the place for you to go. But if you're a serious safari enthusiast, this is where you want to go. You're woken early in the morning, have a light breakfast, you go out till about 11 o'clock or so. The early mornings and the late evenings, or the late afternoons, early evenings are the best time for safari. You'll come back around 11ish, have brunchy lunch, sit around, relax, read a book, have a nap, maybe have a jacuzzi, whatever the case may be, and then go out in the afternoon, and you can mix up your safari. So maybe if you went out for a driving safari in the morning, in the afternoon, you might do some sort of a wet safari. And then we usually do that till about 8 o'clock at night, and then we have dinner. Now, just as the sun is setting, they will have a sundowner where the driver guides will pull out your favorite beverage, be it a glass of wine or a rum and coke or even just a juice or so, with some appetizers, and you'll enjoy the sun setting. So that's kind of a special aspect of your Okavango Delta safari as well. Just some pictures here. We have the Mokoro, already showed you that. You can also do walking safaris there, which is kind of unique. Again, the guides are carrying guns for protection. We've never had a problem. One other thing about the boating safaris is a lot of these boats they have are double-deckered. So you can actually get up on the second tier, and as they pull up to a tree, you'll be at the same elevation as the birds, and so you get some great shots of birds if you're into birding. And quite frankly, the birding in Africa is excellent. I never really was a birding person until I went to Africa. Now I'm quite enamored by birds, African birds in particular. Now the venues themselves are usually smaller camps, permanent tented camps. So these would be Hemingway style canvas tents erected on raised platforms, very well appointed. There'd be very comfortable beds in them, hot water and a shower and electricity. And then there even might be a central complex where there's a pool, fire pit, swimming pool perhaps. You can set up your own schedule. We recommend you stay 2 to 3 days at one camp and maybe two or three days fly to another camp, because the environment throughout the Delta does change from one camp to the next. In fact, many of the concessions vary from one to the other, and we typically will stay at the concessions where the best animal encounters are, rather than staying at a venue where you have like the best venue itself. We think the location is more important. So that's sort of our philosophy throughout visiting Africa in general, that the location is far more important than the venue itself. Now the vehicles that we use are 4-wheel drive heavy-duty suspension Land Cruisers. Now they're open-sided and they're tiered. So the people in the back sit higher than the people in the middle, who sit higher than the people closer to the driver. Everyone has a great line of sight. There's no danger at all with this. The animals are not interested in us, although we do suggest that you not stand up or move or have your leg or arm hanging out the vehicle when you're in close proximity to some of the animals, okay? The animals are quite habituated to the vehicles, so you can actually get quite close to the wildlife in the Okavango Delta. The vehicles themselves are roofless, so that you can, if you have a bird right above you, you can get some good shots. This is really preferred by the birders or the twitchers, as they're known. But if you want a roof put on your vehicle, you can arrange that ahead of time. One of the other interesting aspects of the Okavango Delta safaris is there's generally a tracker who sits on a seat right at the front of the safari vehicle, and then of course you're all sitting behind him here. And these guys will oftentimes get off the vehicle. He's looking for tracks, and if he sees an interesting set of tracks, be it a leopard or something like that, he'll jump off his vehicle and go walking through the bush, and the driver will actually follow him. And this is called off-tracking. Again, it's kind of unique to the Okavango Delta, and it really enhances the whole safari experience. You're following this tracker through the bush looking for game. It's really quite exciting, and again, great for photo opportunities. What else do we want to talk about here? Nighttime off-tracking. Talked about all that. One other way of experiencing the Delta is in the private concessions. As I was mentioning at the outset here, we have Moremi Game Reserve here. It's a private concession. Again, excellent safari destination, but you don't have the same number of privileges as you have in the private concessions. Like for instance, in the private concessions, you can do nighttime safaris. You can't do that in the public concessions. You can't do walking safaris in the public areas. You can't do horse riding or elephant riding. So there's a number of things that you cannot do in the private concessions, and it's not as pricey as the private concessions, but the public concession there is still more expensive than other destinations in Africa. One other thing about the Okavango Delta is it also butts up against Chobe National Park and Savuti and so on and so forth. So sometimes a lot of people will combine a visit to the Okavango Delta with a visit to Chobe National Park as well. If you're looking to do something a little bit cheaper than the private concessions, and even the public concession, you can also do what's called a private mobile tenting safari. Now this is where we will go out and we will go with a driver guide, and we will set up tents. Like these are little dome tents here with a fold-out cot in them, and we'll set up a dome tent, a campsite at special campsites. There'll be a fire there, and then the cook, well, we bring all our food with us, all our supplies, booze and the whole bit, and the cook will cook outside. And you'll just sit outside here around the campfire, and you still have excellent safari experience. It's a little more rustic. Sometimes some people actually prefer this over staying at the camps. And it's quite a bit cheaper than the private concessions and the public concessions where you stay in the permanent tented camps or the mobile tented camps. But again, private mobile safari in Botswana is still quite a bit more expensive than some of the other destinations in Africa. So that kind of wraps up my spiel on Okavango Delta. This is in our ebook called How to Best Tour Africa. If you'd like to get our ebook, give us a shout at our toll-free number or our email address, and we'll send it to you electronically.